and we do have a quorum of the City of Fort Worth Redistricting Task Force. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Espino. I'm the chair of this task force, and I hereby call this meeting to order. I want to first start by thanking all of the task force members for the tremendous amount of work you've done in pouring over 26 different maps, numerous and countless citizen comments, whether in public meetings, hearings, email, letters, phone calls that people have made to you. Obviously, this is a very important endeavor. We all take our responsibility serious, and today we have the task of selecting an initial map for City Council consideration, and then the process will go from there. As we know, the City Council will ultimately vote on a map, and this is significant because in addition to redistricting happening once every 10 years, for the first time in the history of the City of Fort Worth, the city will go to 10 single-member districts instead of 8. So in addition to looking at the current council district boundaries of 8, 2 new districts are being created as well. And of course, this is being a diverse city. There are diverse opinions about what those maps should be from our citizens, from different leaders, from residents. And so it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with every single one of you. You've exhibited tremendous attention to detail, professionalism, civility, and I think today we will have a nice discussion and spirited debate in the spirit of Fort Worth, where we can respect each other's differing views and come up with a recommended map to the council. So with that, I'll get started and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the January 13th public hearing. I hope everyone's had a chance to read those minutes, and the chair will entertain a motion for approval. There's a motion made by Mr. Williams to approve the minutes from the January 13th public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. And now we go to public presentations. We're going to hear from our citizens and residents. And the presentations will be for 3 minutes. So according to the list that I've been handed by the city secretary's office, we start off, I think we have Mr. Pablo Calderon, remote. Mr. Calderon, you have the floor in 3 minutes. Welcome.
First slide, Melissa, please. A revision which I'd like to make joins 4 communities of interest that I mistakenly split. 1 block in Como, 1 block in Berkshire, a few blocks in South Hills. I split Gateway Park, and I think if these are accepted, my COI score would drop to 8%. I also moved less than 100 people in District 4 south to 820, and I hope that's also considered a tweak. Next slide. I used the Stop 6 transformation plan boundaries, which are larger than the historic Stop 6, which is outlined in yellow. So I moved that from District 8 to District 5, and the light blue areas are the areas that had to be shifted from 5 into 8. That way we could keep the balance of numbers pretty much the same, and the numbers actually in the percentages of Hispanics and African Americans hardly changed at all. I appreciate Mark McAvoy for the next 2 slides. One is about Hispanic representation in the city of Fort Worth. Mark's staff prepared these here in the just real recently. Okay, this first one has African American population, and you can see that African Americans have some pockets in far north side, Woodhaven, Stop 6, Glen Park, Glen Haven, Highland Hills, and increasingly south of Edgewood Village. I think the next slide should be the Hispanic population. You can see a great number in North Fort Worth, now in the Poly Stop 6 area, Worth Heights, and increasingly moving to southeast and south of Edgecliff Village also. Now together, looking at the next slide, you can see that our combined numbers really give us good opportunities communities for creating some supermajority minority districts. District 7, and we can stop with the slides, which is fine. District 7 accounts for 38% of the overall growth of Fort Worth. A bit more than half that growth has been north of 820, and they certainly deserve a new district. At the same time, minorities are over 60% and will increase primarily to the south and southeast. Map X, new district, straddles both sides of I-35 South. Most plans, including maps X and Z, have good African-American numbers. Only maps X and Z provide Hispanics with a strong District 2. When you add high-growth areas, as a couple of maps do, into District 2, that will steadily dilute the Hispanic percentage. This is problematic when those areas have higher incomes and more resources. Fernando Flores, I spoke with a couple hours ago. He has a sore throat. He's a South Hemphill Heights resident, and he asked me to comment that South Hemphill Heights does not share socioeconomic characteristics with Mistletoe Heights, Berkeley, Ryan Place, and Fairmount. In his map, Z, Mistletoe Heights and Berkeley are separated from Ryan Place and Fairmount. Map X keeps Mistletoe Heights, Berkeley, Ryan Place, and Fairmount together, but does include Berry and South Hemphill Heights in the new Southside District. Let me note that Ryan Place and South Hemphill Heights are separated by a railroad track that you've seen crossing Hemphill by Elizabeth Boulevard.
Mr. Calderon, if you could wrap it up, please. Thank you. Have you concluded your remarks?
Yes, thank you, folks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Calderon. Appreciate your comments. I did have the next speaker, Mr. Fernando Flores. Mr. Calderon indicated he has a sore throat, but probably we should call him and hear that from him as well, right?
Completed is dialed. Please consult your directory and call again. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory. Your call has been forwarded to an automatic.
We'll try it back. We did hear Mr. Calderon said that Mr. Flores did have a sore throat and possibly could not be able to speak today. So we'll move on. We'll try again at the end of this. Let's move on to Mr. Thomas Torlin Cassie. Hope I pronounced your name right. If you're here, please come up to the podium by the mic, state your name, and you have 3 minutes once you get up to the podium and start speaking. Thank you for being here. Yes, sir. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Chairman, my name is Thomas Torlin Cassie. I live in 76104, the shortest life expectancy in Texas. I wanted to make a couple of points that I hope the task force will be mindful of. First of all, kind of a cute point, which is this is not an art contest. We're not trying to pick the prettiest, best looking map. So it's not like juried art. And to tie that point in, the goal or the mission seems to be to present the citizens of Fort Worth with the best possible, most equitable map for the next 10 years. So one thing I want to encourage is maybe the constraint is that you can only pick one of the 9 finalists, but the truth is that you still have the ability to create some type of hybrid. 2 examples, I think that map X, along with the map that the Como community favors, are strong maps that, if they were integrated, would in fact be most representative of the future. Last time I spoke to the task force, I pointed out that gerrymandering has hurt the entire population of the city of Fort Worth. Our county and our state legislature used such extreme gerrymandering recently that the city of Fort Worth as a whole is underrepresented. So what you do here today will actually counter that. 2 examples, I don't have a timer, so one is we only have 4 Fort Worth citizens in the state legislature, but mathematically we should have 6 or 7. Additionally, most of the county leadership, be they Republican or Democrat, do not reside inside the city of Fort Worth. So how much political power we establish by how we pick a map is going to project into the next 10 years. And then finally, if the Como community doesn't get the version of a map that they prefer, which I think is just and equitable, I want to encourage them to put forward a strong, educated, competent candidate to run for the next mayor of Fort Worth.
Get down, get down, get down.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Torling-Cassie. Next up is Sarah Walker. Ms. Walker, if you're here, please come up to the podium and welcome. Always good to see you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Sarah Walker. I'm a, 84-year-old resident of Fort Worth, Texas. Born and raised in what we call the Rock Island Bottom, which no longer exists. And we, like you, they tore us down after the 49 flood. We no longer exist. But we ask that you unite the Riverside community into one, which cuts all the way across the lines of racial, ethnic, and economic competition within one city council district. The one map that does not unify Riverside is map 1, so we don't support that map. We respectfully beseech you to do the right thing and unite Riverside into one, y'all hear me say one council district. The addition of 2 city council districts presents us with the best opportunity we would have, but one council district is the best for Riverside. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Appreciate your comments. We move on, and next up on the agenda speakers is Leann Reed Jr. Mr. Reed, please come up to the podium.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question before it's my understanding, it's our understanding that the task force will be considering maps as submitted with no revisions or tweaks. Is that correct?
We are right now considering the maps that have been submitted by citizens. And so whatever version of the maps that were submitted, we will consider, according to legal counsel, we can make tweaks, but not wholesale changes to the map submitted by citizens.
Thank you. It's hard enough getting people to vote.
Yeah.
It's hard enough getting people to vote in a city that's renowned for having single-digit voter turnout. It's our reputation in Fort Worth. So you have to beg the question, why is that? Voter disenfranchisement and an apathy for city politics has led people to stay home and get single-digit voting in mayoral and council district elections. And now it seems that the trend is to further disenfranchise the citizens of Como and the West Side by watering down the Como vote.
All right.
There is no way around that. When the state put Como from District 90 and put it in District 99, that weakened Como's vote. Como has always been involved civically. We have U.S. congressmen with roots in Como. We have thespians of world-renowned regard from Como. We have buildings named in this city from Como. So why is it then that Como would even be considered as being disenfranchised further? When we went and we looked at our map and we were trying to say, okay, well, how can we look at the different communities of interest to make, when we started overlapping the maps, there were sections of Como that were considered in Como that weren't even Como. And when we started looking at the map and overlapping it with communities of interest in other areas, oh, well, there's a corner off of here in this district, you know, what percentage of the communities of interest did that affect? Because there was no way of knowing. Does the split take up half a district? Does the split take off a small percentage of a district? Or just does the computer even recognize that the citizens don't even consider that part of their community at all? And so when we move forward in this process, if you have to vote on one map, our focus from day one has always been one man, one vote, because that's what Como's been about. Standing up and voting. I beg you, other than District 5, in the history of Fort Worth, you will rarely see, if ever see, another council district where African Americans led the pack. More often than not, African Americans are always dead last when it comes to voting age representation. But we're expected to get everybody out and expected to do a whole lot more. If you want to get in the game, ante up and kick in. Get in the game. We shouldn't have to create special districts for this. Why is it always minorities that have to come and beg before the council to get things done that are just plain out simple and right? So if you're going to submit a map, the map that you can submit and look yourself in the mirror and anyone who asks you any question is map T. Map T is representative of Fort Worth, and most of the maps submitted gives the citizens the right to one man, one vote. Consider map T strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for your comments. Next up, Ms. Ella Burton. Ella Burton. Come up to the podium, ma'am, and thank you for being here. And once you start speaking from the microphone, you have 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Here again, Ella Burton. I am the president of the Lake Como Neighborhood Advisory Council. I do apologize. I was a placeholder in case Leann didn't get here, and I think he nailed it for us. So I give you that time back.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Now we go to Mr. Bruce Miller. This will be remote, so let us connect to Mr. Bruce Miller.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Mr. Miller. You have the floor, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Bruce Miller here for Citizens for Independent Redistricting. Task Force member Kennedy has rightly pointed out several times that the goal of the Redistricting Task Force and later the City Council is to create the best district map for Fort Worth for the next decade. It doesn't matter who the author is. The process is not a competition amongst map makers. We have to recognize that the way things have worked in the past has left the Hispanic community severely underrepresented on the council. Similarly, because Como is an isolated minority district, it has little to no voice in city elections. The maps submitted by Mr. Flores and Mr. Calderon do a good job addressing the Hispanic concerns, but do not address the Como problem. While the Como map places it in a minority opportunity district, but ignores the Hispanic concerns. What is needed is a new map that addresses both issues simultaneously. Surely, the task force, working with the council and present map makers, should be able to combine these maps to create a working solution for the city. Regardless of whether this is called heavy tweaking or something else entirely, That's what is needed. The lack of a process where map makers have to get together to create the best outcome is a fundamental weakness of the current approach, and why we should have gone with an independent redistricting commission that would have addressed all these issues at one time. Perhaps someday the city will wake up and smell the coffee. Right now, map makers are working behind the scene to adjust maps to create an equitable solution. And I hope the task force is able to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next up is Mr. Bob Willoughby. Mr. Willoughby, if you're here, you have the floor, 3 minutes, and I would thank you for being here, sir.
Wait till I get to what I'm saying. You may not want to thank me.
Remember, stay on topic, no personal attacks, stay on the focus.
Personal attacks, anything. I'm just going to say that, like one of the speakers spoke about, no one voting. You know why? City don't include people. This is not included to the over 900,000 to the general public that don't know anything about this. And it's a shame. It's a lie. The last task force, you can go to my website, fwdistrict5.com. You can see Leann Miller, the chair, barefaced lying on video. Let me tell you something. People that don't speak out against liars, you're just as guilty, if not more guilty, okay?
All right,
What I'm saying is, if you don't, I've asked for 5 years. All I've asked, put this on the ballot. Proposition 2 goes right to the heart of redistricting. It was not talked about in 101. I've been shut down from talking about it. That's wrong. Yet, they go around and they yell, we're transparent. I've got so many tapes of these people, the last one, saying we're going to be transparent. Even the mayor, transparent. It's not transparent. Let me tell you that. It's only a small group of people, and you're very self-centered, and a shame on every one of you to participate in this thing until everybody knows about it. We have 900,000 residents out there that should know about it. You put it on billboards, you put it on the ballot, I'll grant you it will fail. It will fail. And they will not do it because they do not want it to fail. They want it to go there, and it's not your right to make it go your way. It's supposed to go the citizens' way. Right now, to add 2 more council members, like adding 2 good apples to 8 rotten apples in a barrel. Because we don't have control of the council members now. They don't answer us, and I proved my point. No respect. 5 years I've asked and never answered me. 5 years. I was at the charter meetings. Less than 1% voted for 2 more councilmen. It takes 20% to remove one. And we're going to put them in at 1. I have no skin in the game. It can go either way. My whole game is let everybody know. You put it on billboards. You want 2 more council members. Then they start feeling a part of the city. Maybe we can get our voting up when you start letting people know about it. But when you do it secretly, and Mr. Moon, Councilmember Moon has deep skin in this. For some reason or another, he's leaving, but there's just too much corruption in this. And we saw too many lies of people talking about transparency.
Mr. Willoughby, go ahead and finish up and
Okay.
watch your personal attacks, please. Thank you.
One thing real quick. Here it is in the City Times. You know what they put in here about redistrictizing? One little bit of line on it you should know. It didn't even get a heading. We're doing this to the whole city. That proves my point. They don't want anybody to know. You put it on billboards and put it on the ballot and include everybody. And then we go forward, and that's right. Otherwise, it's wrong, it's sin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. Just want to make sure the record is clear for citizens watching. There was an election to go to 10 single-member districts in 2016. We did have recent municipal elections this past May with more than a large turnout. It was probably one of the municipal elections with the largest turnout in history of Fort Worth, and several new council members were elected. So we do have basically, I believe, 6 new members on the city council. The charter amendment election to go to 10 districts was also voted on by the citizens. And we all agree that we want to do the maximum and best possible outreach. So on that note, Mr. Willoughby, you and I and the task force and the citizens of Fourth agree, we all want the best possible outreach. All right, so now we move on to Rusty Fuller by phone.
This is Rusty.
Mr. Fuller, welcome. You're on the floor right now with the Redistricting Task Force. You signed up to speak. So, sir, you have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking about redistricting and the maps. As you know, today the task force is going to recommend a map to the city council.
Thank you. Well, I'm Rusty Fuller. I'm president of the North Fort Worth Alliance and representing some 27,000 homes in far North Fort Worth. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before your task force. We've been working closely with and as a part of the multi-neighborhood working group to participate in the very important process that will shape Fort Worth for the next 10 years. In our analysis, we've been mindful of all the task force recommendations to council within their respective categories of high priority and low priority. We have read and included in our analysis the observations of the consultant Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, Acosta, LLP. In our analysis, maps U and Q best meet all the priorities of the task force recommended to the council. They provide minority opportunity districts while keeping the city's neighborhoods pretty much intact with a community of interest factor of 2.6%. A third choice, map X, this map meets all the priorities of the recommendations. It does provide better opportunity districts for Hispanics. It does come with more impact on dividing neighborhoods with a community of interest factor of 16.9%. In all, we would recommend you keep foremost in your minds the observation of the consultant in the last paragraph of the third page. Quote, "There is no guarantee that the electoral results in these districts will be as suggested," unquote. The observations made in this paragraph continue to support the position of the multi-neighborhood working group and the North Fort Worth Alliance that neighborhoods and their issues are a very important factor in your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for your comments. And now we go to Susan Kenny, and she will be by phone.
Hello?
Yes, Ms. Kenny, hi, this is Sal Espino here with the Redistricting Task Force. And are you there? You signed up to speak today, so thank you so much. You have 3 minutes to speak on the topic before us, which is redistricting and the different maps for consideration. You have the floor, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm Susan Kenny, president of the Parkland Neighborhood Association, representing approximately 10,000 residents. Park Glen and our surrounding neighborhoods formed a multi-neighborhood working group to address this redistricting process, and we represent approximately 60,000 people. We ask that the task force recommend to City Council map U, Q, or X, which meet the priorities of the task force by providing minority opportunity districts and keeping the majority of neighborhoods and communities of interest intact. I thank the Redistricting Task Force for all your work, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Kenny, for your comments and appreciate them. Next up, remote is Mr. Paul Wilson. Mr. Wilson, if you join us by remote, sir, you have the floor. Paul Wilson. Are you there? Is Mr. Wilson there? Can we check? Because it said phone/remote and phone was scratched out.
Mr. Wilson indicated that he wanted to speak up via WebEx, but I can't tell if he's on, if he's a calling user.
Do we have his phone number?
Yes, sir.
Let's try his phone number.
This is Paul.
Mr. Wilson, I had you signed up. This is Sal Espino with the City Forward Redistricting Task Force. We had you signed up to speak today. My notes said
Good afternoon.
So I guess we have you on the phone, sir. So go ahead. You have 3 minutes to speak about the redistricting and the different redistricting maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Espino. I appreciate it. Community comes first. Community comes first. Community comes first. I'm Dr. Paul Wilson, president of the Stone Glen Falls Creek community, and speaking with support of my 6,200 neighbors in Fossil Creek, an established community north of the Loop. I live in a very diverse, multi-ethnic community, and I was pleased to hear that Lucretia Powell saw the same thing I saw when I went to Falls Ridge High School as a student. It's a melting pot. We have the largest underrepresented minority of voters as well in our district, District 4, people that identify as Asian in our community. All of our communities in our area got together to form a multi-neighborhood working group representing approximately 60,000 diverse residents in North Fort Worth. We do have diversity, and I keep using that word because when you look at the numbers, the statistics don't lie. Nearly 10% of our residents are African American, actually over 10% are Asian, over 20% are Hispanic, and we are proud of our diversity. Community comes first. Map T, while coming from the perspective of the Como area, does a wonderful thing down in that part of the city. However, up on our part of the city, it kind of tears apart neighborhoods, communities of interest here. It lacks the perspective from our side of the town. And thus, it does not make an equitable impact in our area, which is already quite diverse, more so than the average population of Fort Worth when you look at the statistics. We have found maps U and Q best meet all the priorities of the task force, and we recommend those to the council as well. They provide minority opportunity districts while keeping the city's neighborhoods pretty much intact with community of interest factor of 2.6%. As a runner-up, we also support Map X. While this map meets all the priorities and recommendations, it does provide better opportunity districts for Hispanics, which is great. This does come with more impact on dividing neighborhoods with community of interest factor, dividing community of interest factor of 16.9%. So please take another look at Map U. It provides an enhanced District 2, which is great for the new developments that are coming up on I-35. It's important to us that our neighborhood remain in the same representation district as Summerfields, and I'm speaking about Fossil Creek, as well as Summerfields, Park Glen, Fossil Park, all of which share similar issues related to development, emergency services, transportation. We're really focused on the meat of the city in terms of services and access to those services and having those issues be recognized in one area, not spread amongst the city. We have our own issues. We want to focus on our own issues. And we believe that other communities should have their interests focused on their issues without any type of confusion, hesitation, or distraction by greater issues or other issues in other parts of the city. So we're looking for recommendations that conserve compactness and allow us to continue doing what we do, which is being a diverse community in North Fort Worth. We're functionally one large community and submitted a request to be recognized as such. And I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate your comments. Okay, we're going to try one last time with Mr. Flores. He may not be able to speak, but we'll try one last time. If you can call him, Madam Secretary.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic.
All right, that should do it. I think he's unable to speak, so we'll move forward. On the next item up on our agenda is a briefing on legal compliance of the top 9 maps. Ms. Leann Guzman has the floor, and welcome, Ms. Guzman.
Thank you, Chairman Espino, members of the task force. I'm here to introduce you to Philip Arnold. He has come and spoken with us a couple of times remotely, and he's here in person today to go over with you the legal compliance review that his firm did of the 9 top maps. And I did just want to say one brief thing, that his law firm focused on the Voting Rights Act compliance. And there are other criteria, of course, that you all are using for these maps. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all are continue to keep your viewpoint on these maps broad and looking at all of the criteria in addition to these that he'll go over today. So Philip, if you would come.
Welcome, Mr. Arnold. And everyone on the task force should have received his letter, his analysis, letter dated January 21st, 2022. And again, as Ms. Guzman said, it has to do with compliance with the Voting Rights Act, Section 2. Mr. Arnold, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Task force members, we analyzed the 9 maps that you looked at, and from, as Ms. Guzman said, a compliance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is a pretty narrow analysis. It's really only one of your criteria. And Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, it very simply stated, stands for the proposition that you should not discriminate against minority voters. And there are a lot of nuances to that. But essentially, as we stated in our letter, the goal is not necessarily to maximize minority opportunity districts or even minority majority districts. That's not really a requirement under Section 2, but it's to not discriminate against them intentionally. Now, Section 5 does have a non-retrogression standard, but Section 5 doesn't apply at the moment under current Supreme Court case law. But trying to stay within the spirit of Section 5 is not retrogressing. So looking at an apples to apples comparison is a little difficult in Fort Worth right now because you have 8 districts, you're moving to 10. So to say you have a certain number of minority council members now, and how do you translate that into a district of 10 or a city with 10 districts is a little difficult. The way we did it in our letter was to break it down by population. So to say that the Anglo population is 46.6%, Hispanic 27.2%, and African American of 20.1%. So trying to obtain rough proportionality between those in a 10-member district. It's not always possible to do that because essentially drawing districts is, as you know, and as you've seen through this process, can be very difficult, particularly when communities like the Hispanic community is not necessarily concentrated in certain neighborhoods. They may be in, let's say, the north side of Fort Worth, but may not necessarily be in the south side or other sides of town. So it can be difficult to draw districts that contain a majority of any particular minority group. But I think the maps we looked at, really all 9 of these maps do a very good job of it. We talked about the 9 in our letter, and we talked about really in specifically the 3 strongest Hispanic districts, because that seemed to be a focus of the task force, and I think of the city in general, was to look at creating stronger Hispanic districts. And those were I, X, and Z. That's not to say, again, that these maps are the best maps for the city of Fort Worth. You have other criteria to look at. The Voting Rights Act is just one of them. And none of these maps are, well, you never say never as a lawyer, right? I cannot sit here before you and say if you adopt one of these maps, nobody will challenge it and that you will win any lawsuit that anybody brings, because I can't say that. But I think all 9 maps are strong maps. All maps seem to comply with the Voting Rights Act under our analysis. Identifying the 3 strongest Hispanic districts, I think, is I, X, and Z. You can make a case for other ones, though. And there's certainly other ways to look at it. And of course, you have to look at the African American population too, preserving the strength of the districts that exist, and realizing that the African American population may not need as large of a voting age population in order to elect a candidate of their choosing as a Hispanic population may. But again, those are generalizations. That's not really anything you can set in stone. But generally speaking, that's true, and that's due to a variety of factors. But I think all the maps are certainly maps you can consider, and I think they're all worth consideration. But there may be reasons beyond the Voting Rights Act to consider them, such as keeping certain neighborhoods together, certain communities of interest together. That may be a particular map, let's say, maximizes Hispanic representation in a certain district or multiple districts, but maybe divides another community across town as a consequence of that. So those are all things to take into account. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Since the public hasn't seen the letter, is there a way to put the letter up, or at least page 3 with the analysis of the districts? Is there a way to do that stuff? Is there a PDF, I guess, that can be shown to the public? of the letter, or at least the page 3 that shows the analysis of opportunity districts. After that, I'll open it up for any questions by the task force. I know that the task force has the letter, but I'd like to see if we can put the letter up and the public can see it as well. There we go. All right. So we could zoom in a little bit more on that letter, or is that the best we can do?
Let's see.
There we go. So you can see there what Mr. Arnold was talking about in terms of, as he indicated, minority opportunity districts is one factor. It is a high priority factor, but there's other factors. But you can see there how the different plans are with respect to Hispanic opportunity districts and African American districts. And again, this has to do with compliance with the Voting Rights Act, specifically Section 2. Is that right, Mr. Arnold?
Yes, sir. And I think it's worth pointing out, too, that minority opportunity districts under Supreme Court case law, at least as applies to the Voting Rights Act, are not really, they're not a factor as far as compliance with the Voting Rights Act. I mean, there's clear precedent on that from the Supreme Court saying that minority opportunity districts, one, while being very hard to define, I think as you all have learned, would be very difficult for federal courts to define. So the Supreme Court in a case called Bartlett said that we're going to make the standard for a challenge under Section 2 a straight percentage of 50% or greater than 50% majority minority district. So anything below that, while it may be considered an opportunity district for a variety of reasons, as far as Section 2 compliance goes, it doesn't matter. But it may matter to you, it may matter to the citizens, it may matter for other things. But I just want to point that out as far as Section 2 goes, minority opportunity district is not really, it's difficult to define, I guess is my point.
Right. Sorry, I'm getting a question. Go ahead, I'll go with you. And then I saw, is this the right letter? Because remember there was a revision to make sure we had the right number of council, the right council district numbers, I guess. But anyway, go ahead, you had the floor. Let me go first to the task force member. He has a question. Mr. Norris?
Yes. Yeah, it was picking up on what you were just saying. When you're labeling these, especially the African-American districts, as opportunities, you're not talking about the term of art minority opportunity district, correct?
What we're saying is there is an opportunity for a minority to be elected from those districts. Whether that district will elect a certain candidate, you're just not going to know until you have an election because it's going to depend on a lot of things, a lot of factors. Voter registration, voter turnout being your big ones, because it doesn't matter how many people live in a certain district. If they don't vote, then their vote won't count.
But correct me if it has to be the above 50% to be a minority opportunity district?
No, if it is above 50%, it is what they call a majority minority district, which would not be a minority opportunity district. So minority opportunity district would be something less than 50%. And to follow up on the numbering issue, I apologize. Our GIS people had received the maps from the city and inputted them into our software and had numbered them 1 to 10.
Here with the districts.
Yeah, this is the correct.
Again, apologies to the public, but this is the correct. There was the difference in districts. The first letter had the analysis correctly, just the district numbering was different. This matches up the current city council districts. So you can see districts 5 and 8, 6, 2, those correspond. And of course, there's going to be 2 new districts as well. But this talks about, the maps and the analysis. And then just to clarify what Mr. Arnold is saying, it gets really technical because you do have what they call majority minority district. If you can create one under the Jingles test, right, the council would be obligated to create one if they could under that test, right?
Generally, well, under Jingles, it's that a plaintiff has to be able to show that you could create one in order for the case not to be dismissed.
I got you. And that's for a majority minority opportunity district. When you talk about coalition districts, as Mr. Norris' point, the best example is right now, right? You have districts 5, 8, and 6. They don't have a 50% plus African-American voting age population, but they've been able to elect African-Americans in those districts. So you could make the argument that those are minority opportunity districts, just in practice, maybe not legally. I'm just trying to not confuse the issue.
Yes, sir. Yes, I think that's a good example.
Okay, let me go to you, Ms. Herrera, then I'll go to Ms. Boyd.
Hi. I noticed that you did not put map S in the strong Hispanic. And when I take and I look at Hispanic, the Black opportunity, and then total that up, I actually find on map X that there's 3 opportunities for Hispanic and 1 opportunity in the Black community. And then when I look at that, there's actually, it's over 64% for 4 districts. That would be a minority opportunity. So
Are we in S or X? I'm sorry.
S as in
S,
Sam.
okay, that's what I thought.
So we are covering the Hispanic community and then also the Black community. So I'm looking at it, that's way over 50%. District 9 is 59.5% when you combine those two. And then District 8 is all the way to 77% plus. District 2 is 78. District 2 is currently the Hispanic dominance right now. So if we don't have to be at 50% for a particular race, when you're at 45%, that's still higher than when you look at the white percent. So when I total those up, there is definitely opportunity on map S as in Sam, but it doesn't look like here by the way it was defined in your letter. So I just want to make a point of that.
So specifically with map S, let's take, for example, District 9, which has a 45.9% Hispanic voting age population and a 35.7% white population and a 13.6% African-American population. So just looking at those percentages, it would appear that Hispanics would probably, if Hispanics and whites are voting for different candidates, a Hispanic candidate would win. But that may not be true because as I detail in the letter, there's a lot of factors that go into Hispanic representation or Hispanic voters not voting necessarily as a cohesive block and not necessarily voting as strongly as white and Black voters do. And that's due to a variety of factors. So if we take the 5.9%, some percentage of those won't be citizens of the Hispanic population. I don't know if it's 0.1% or 5%, but there will be some percentage. Hispanics tend to be younger. So while this voting age population may be over the age of 18, if your median age is, let's say, 32 versus a median age of African-American or white voters who may be 45, 50, older voters across the spectrum are going, just generally speaking, vote more than younger voters. So that's going to turn out, that's kind of voter turnout, that's going to knock that percentage down a little bit. And then voter registrations also tends to be lower in the Hispanic community. This is a broad generalization, but so as you can kind of chip away at that 45%, you get pretty close and maybe lower than that white voting age population. So how this district would perform, it's very difficult to say because we don't know what those factors are. We don't know how many citizens, how many Hispanic, how many of this Hispanic population are citizens, for example. And we could probably figure out their age to get some guidance on that. But until, the election comes, you don't really know how they're going to vote. So that's why in this case, I would argue that District 9, while a pretty high percentage of Hispanic population, might not elect a Hispanic candidate.
But you could also say that by all the information you just said, if you're saying 50% for a Hispanic district, you don't know that 50% of those people are going to come up. It becomes a semantics to me on numbers versus looking at this from an minority opportunity, which is one of the things we're looking at. Obviously, Hispanics is a growing community, and we want to recognize that. I just want to make that point.
And there's two different things. So one is Voting Rights Act and what will get you past one of the prongs of the Jingles test, as it's called. Jingles is a Supreme Court case. And one of those is you have to show that the voting age population can be over 50%, that you could draw a district like that. The other part of what you're asking is, in practical terms, what would it take to actually elect a candidate? And those are different questions. It may be 70%. It may be 35%. It's going to depend on where you are and that particular population in that district. So that's going to vary probably from district to district within the city, and it's certainly going to vary from city to city and state to state. So it may take, anecdotally, 60% African-American population in North Carolina to elect an African-American representative, but in Texas, it's typically a lot lower. It might be 35%. Why is that? I mean, there would be a variety of factors for it, but that's just an example of it's going to vary from community to community. So it's very difficult to predict how any district's going to vote.
Ms. Boyd, then I'll go to Ms. Hermosillo. Ms. Boyd?
I wanted to follow up on that about the opportunity. I think when we talk about District 6, remembering it did happen this time, but there was a flat out battle to make it happen. So I think looking at District 6 as an opportunity is a really early on to make that a call, unless we do like what Como was saying, and Como is moved into District 6 where it can strengthen that vote. Other than that, I think this time it was a complete battle for Dr. Williams as a Black man to be elected in District 6. So I think just like what you're saying about in District 9, though the voting population may appear, that it may not realize is what we're looking for. The other thing I wanted to ask about, I get that what you're talking about is legality, right? But I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, or that we're at least having the conversation. Are we looking at it? I get what the bare minimum is, but we don't want to do the bare minimum, is my understanding, just as a city of Fort Worth, and from what I've heard from the mayor, the Race and Culture Task Force, all the different things, and the Redistricting Task Force, the first version of the task force, is that this is something we're prioritizing. And I get that we have to know the legality behind it, but just wanted to understand from everyone, what exactly are we looking at? Are we looking at the bare minimum, which is what I'm hoping that we're not doing?
I would say that we want to produce the best map for the citizens of Fort Worth, a map that is fair, legal, equitable, and just, and we have leeway on that. We can go above the minimum. We can, that's what this task force is entrusted with. When we get to the discussion, we're going to get into, everybody can advocate for the maps they think best meets that criteria, but I do agree with you. There is the bare minimum, and there is what we believe is the best map that represents the citizens of Fort Worth, that represents the growth in the city, the diversity in the city, that represents, the views that were espoused in the Race and Cultural Task Force. That's a diverse map, and that gives every community of interest an opportunity to select a candidate of their choice. I think that's the goal. And then we have that criteria that we're all guided for. The council adopted a resolution that the task force recommended that we're following. And we'll go back to that before we start our discussion about the criteria of how we evaluate the maps. But that's a very good point, Ms. Boyd, about what's the legal minimum and what is it that we can really do. Ms. Hermosillo, you have the floor.
Yes, can you shed some insight onto how y'all distinguish strong versus opportunity under that Hispanic Opportunity District section?
So again,
From a numerical perspective, I assume.
Yes, based on the maps we have, so we get the same maps and charts that you all have considered, and that's what we reviewed. And based on that, I mean, it's pretty easy to look at what is, I think, pretty consistently called District 2 across the maps, but what is the north side of Fort Worth, that has somewhere in the 60s to 70% Hispanic voting age population. That is pretty much, I think, in every map, that is going to be your strongest Hispanic district, and has historically elected Hispanic candidates. So arguably will continue to. But these are new maps, so we don't know that for sure, but I think that you can make that logical leap. Then you get down to the districts where it is more 52, 47, 46, 54, right in there. Will those districts, what you might say, perform for a Hispanic candidate, or will the candidate who is elected, be a candidate of Hispanic choosing? Is difficult to predict. You don't know. So it's just very hard to say that you could say that map, I'm just looking at X, has two pretty strong Hispanic districts, a 68 and a 52, and then one at 47. You know, that may still only elect one Hispanic candidate.
Right.
I mean, that very well may happen. So that's what we looked at when doing it. So I, X, and Z in our analysis were really the maps with the strongest Hispanic districts. But that's not to say that they will necessarily elect the most Hispanics under any scenario.
Understood. But so to try to put a number to it, I mean, I hear you saying that's essentially in the low 50s, above 50%, but perhaps more in the low mid 50s as far as kind of creating an opportunity, and then well in excess of that into the 60s or above is what y'all were defining as, or kind of classifying as a strong Hispanic opportunity district.
Yes, really of the strongest, yes, of the options out there. So 2 is always the strongest. And then after that, it's kind of, you know, parsing between maybe a couple of percentage points each way.
Mr. Hermosillo, you still have the floor? You have any more follow-up? Because then I'll go to Ms. Kennedy after Ms. Hermosillo is finished.
That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy?
In looking at other communities you've worked with in Texas, are these about the same percentages you're finding with other Hispanic opportunity districts?
It depends a lot on the community. I've worked with communities who wanted to create, who may not have any Hispanic representation on their city or county level. And a lot of their population growth had been in the Hispanic community in the last 10 years. And Hispanic leaders wanted to try to create a Hispanic commissioner's court precinct or city council district. And sometimes we just weren't able to even do it because the population is just too spread out across the county or across the city that it just wasn't possible, or it was possible in a way that created, that really was a pretty gerrymandered looking map where we would have, you know, fingers that go in to try and collect pockets of maybe Hispanic population. But then that really goes against the compactness, keeping communities of interest together, keeping neighborhoods together. So you're violating all your other factors in order to try to get this particular map. And you might be able to do it, you might be able to get 51%, but then is a 51% Hispanic district even going to elect anything? And now you've drawn a crazy district that, you know, may violate the Voting Rights Act. So it's always a fine line of trying to do your best to give Hispanic representation versus taking into account all the other criteria, because all the other criteria are there for a reason. And they're there in part to make them, as you'll notice, most of them are race neutral. Communities of interest is race neutral. Identifiable boundaries for district boundaries is race neutral. Compactness is race neutral. And they're race neutral for a reason. Those criteria come from Supreme Court case law. So it's a way of using certain criteria in order to draw maps so that while you don't want to intentionally discriminate against a minority group or even unintentionally discriminate against them, you also don't want to go the other way, which is Shaw versus Reno is another Supreme Court case I know I've talked about where you can go too far in taking race into account, and that could violate the Voting Rights Act. So it's a difficult balance, but that's why all the criteria are there. And if there's other reasons to do something besides race, then you need to look at it. And that may be having a certain road that is easily identifiable, you know, Camp Bowie or University or whatever, be your dividing line. Or I-35 or I-20 or the Trinity River. They're, you know, and that way everybody knows. And maybe that's a reason because people are confused because it jumps across the river for some reason. That may be a good reason to look at that factor instead of some other factor.
Any other questions of Mr. Arnold? Thank you, Mr. Arnold, for your insight. Thank you for the analysis.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Ms. Powell. Thank you. You have the floor, ma'am. My apologies.
No problem. I noticed you have, for as District 8, strong opportunity for Hispanics.
Which one again, I'm sorry?
District 8.
8?
8.
In which plan, I'm sorry?
Plan I, X, and Z.
Yes, okay.
What is your analysis on that, and
So
for what
let's
reason?
look at I. So in I, District 8 is 50.5%. That is combined with a District 2 of 68.4%, which again, we see pretty consistently across the maps of a strong District 2. In District 10, which is, I believe, 53.4%. Sorry, my copy printed weird this morning. I creates 3 majority Hispanic districts by voting age population. Now, again, whether those will elect a Hispanic candidate, but that 50% in District 8 there is pretty strong, especially as compared to the other maps. Plan X. So District 8 in Plan X is 47.5%, not above the 50% threshold for, a Section 2 case, but still pretty high, and combined with other pretty strong Hispanic districts as well in District 2 and District 1/11. And then in Plan Z was the other one. District 8 is 48.9%. So again, pretty high. You have a high District 2 in that one, and District 10 is pretty strong as well, 54.6%. It's really one of the stronger second Hispanic districts of any of the maps. So it's, I would say, across these 3, it probably gives the best opportunity to create you're going to probably get 1 Hispanic district of this. It's always probably going to be 2. I, X, and Z probably give you the second or the best opportunity to really have a good chance at electing a second one. And, maybe a third as well. That's kind of where we came from with it, is what's going to give you the best opportunity. So it's not necessarily that it's 50%. It may be that it is much more than that. It may be 54%, and that really gives you some cushion, I guess.
It may be less as well, because 47% and 48% is not 50%. Not only that, as you, do you have the percentage of the age or the citizens who are actually American citizens who have the right to vote? Did you do the analysis on that as well? So just like the other districts, and within your analysis and the other analysis is that we have read states, I noticed that y'all use, I'm going to say as an excuse for the Hispanic population being too young to vote. And in certain areas, they are of age to vote. And it seems as though that the areas that they appear to be of age to vote, you combine them with other districts to come up with your analysis, as opposed to keeping them separate. Then also, as Dr. Williams stated in the caller who called in, that he's more interested, or the community is more interested in map Q, U, and X. And he tried to quote something that, a statement I made about Foster Ridge, yes, the student body being a melting pot, and that Park Glen, Foster Ridge, and so forth, all of those surrounding communities support that map. But he failed to mention that I also stated because for those who are, this is your first time being at the meeting, I also stated that my granddaughter attends Foster Ridge, and all her teachers are white. So there's no minority opportunity in Foster Ridge High School, and I'm sure it's at the other high schools. Those areas, that particular neighborhood, period, I'm over there quite often. I've shared with the task force board experience I had over there, but at the same time, it wasn't one of good coming from the white Anglo community, a majority. The Northwest side has grown, as the mayor has stated in her iPod speech, 76%. 76%. But yet, it is a problem we're going back and forth about where to create where to create a Hispanic opportunity. At the same time, map X and X, Z, and I, as you stated, appears to be the best maps or the strongest map to create a Hispanic opportunity. If District 2, if I'm not mistaken, that is Firestone's district, has grown 76%. 76%. How is it not, that district, not a strong opportunity for a Hispanic? The city has brought in a professor the last time we met, and he spoke about how the Hispanics vote. They vote, those who live in certain districts, as Park Glen, Foster Ridge, they vote with their white counterparts. And those who don't live in those top districts of that sort don't vote at all unless they see representation on every level, from local, state, and government. So explain to me, how is it that District 8, again, where the maps want to remove major historic areas, want to split up African Americans sections, even one particular map, I believe it's map Q, takes Councilman Nettles even out of his own primary residential area.
Yeah, Ms. Powell, thank you for your comments. It's Councilmember Firestone is in District 7.
Excuse, I stand corrected.
Right.
But again,
no, I hear you.
That's Northwest side, which has grown 76%. Right. And we all know, yes, it's politics, racial ethnicity is involved. When the money come in and trickle down, it comes from there. Start from that end to down. The southeast side, it's a school over there. I know I'm parking Henderson Drive. It took 51 years for those students just to get a sidewalk. And here we are, you talking about a strong Hispanic district for them. The majority of them, the majority of Hispanics, even in that southeast side, are not even residents, citizens. So how can they even vote? District 9, again, majority, for those I believe that were able to even vote, probably voted like, that's the hospital district, probably voted like their counter white constituents and citizens. But yet that district has the highest population of Hispanics, one of them.
Ms. Powell, let Mr. Arnold respond. I think what we're talking about is several things. We're not using citizen voting age population. I'll let council explain why. And you've alluded to what the law calls racially polarized voting, which happens. And I think what we're trying to do with the maps is balance. I do think even under these maps, you see District 8 is still a strong potential African-American district along with 5, and also trying to do something with 6. So I hear you. It's all about balancing the needs of everyone in the community.
But the balance is not right.
Right. We'll have a discussion when we get to the maps. Let the legal counsel here give us an analysis in terms of the maps do create African-American opportunity districts, and then also, you know, the issue of racially polarized voting. And really what we're trying to do is accomplish a legal, fair, and equitable balance. But Mr. Arnold, if you just want to address the legal aspects.
Yes, so as far as citizenship, there's not a citizenship question on the census, so we don't have that data. We do have it from the past. The census releases in non-census years and 5-year increments, usually a community survey that will ask a citizenship question. It's not necessarily one as accurate as the census is, because it's not nationwide, or it is nationwide, but it's not as in-depth as the actual census is in decennial years. So we'll get some citizenship data later, but we don't have it right now with this new census that's out. So you're right to say that a 51% Hispanic district is probably not going to be 51% of citizen voting age population, right? It may be voting age population, but it may not be citizen voting age population. So what that is with citizenship and how that brings it down, we just don't know right now.
All right. Any questions of legal? Because I know we're ready to have a good discussion on the maps and the criteria. All right, Mr. Arnold, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now we get to the discussion. What I want to do here first, if staff could put up the criteria that the task force has to consider the maps before we get to discussion. And while they're doing that, I'll talk. You know, obviously 26 maps, and we narrowed it down to 9. The legal analysis has to do with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, but there's a criteria that we have to follow. And I think here's where we're gonna have the spirited discussion as to our thoughts are on the maps and where we are. So let me just have staff first put up the criteria. And then while we're waiting, I want to advise the task force and the public that legal counsel's analysis is now on the City of Fort Worth redistricting page. So if you go to fortworthtexas.gov/redistricting, you will see the you will see where the letter is, the analysis, the legal analysis that Mr. Arnold and his law firm wrote for consideration by the task force. Again, I do want to make clear to the public and the task force, the maps cannot be decided solely on the criteria of race. What we're trying to do is have the diverse communities be able to select a candidate of their choice. For example, District 2, even though it had a majority Hispanic population, elected Councilmember Jim Lane from 1993 to 2005. And so that can happen in other areas as well. It's simply the opportunity of that community to select a candidate of their choice. So while we're waiting on the criteria. Yes, sir.
Sal, how are we going to establish which map we choose? Are we going to go through a scoring and ranking process again?
What I wanted to do first is allow everybody to just kind of weigh in what your thoughts were after hearing from the public. And you know, I want to go around the table and I want to hear everybody's thoughts because it's a democratic process. And then we could do that, see which maps. I do want clarification from staff on what is a tweak versus a change that's not allowed, because apparently we're not allowed to combine maps. We have to take a citizen map that we like and tweak it. And then I think we can even have the leeway to make additional recommendations to council. Like if we wanted to see a wholesale change, and I'll get clarification from staff what that means, we could also make that recommendation to council. So we could select the map and tweak it and say, oh, by the way, council, we also want you to consider this and this map. You see what I'm saying? I think, but let me first go over the criteria. And if you want to hear what we can do between tweaks and changes, I'll be happy to do that, because you may want to, in your remarks, I like this map, but I also wish we could do this to this map. You know what I mean? So I may have staff do that before we go into a round table. So I'm gonna go around the floor first and tell you which maps you liked and what you'd like to see. But first, let's go with the redistricting criteria. And Ms. Guzman, if you could just show those, there we go. And I don't want to repeat them, but there they are, the high priority. Everybody can see equal size, compliance, no fragmentation, no retrogression, create minority opportunity districts, obviously keep communities of interest together. Anyone have contiguous territory, compactness, identify no boundaries, whole voting precincts, whole census blocks or block groups. And then number 10, do not consider the place of residence of incumbents or potential candidates. So that's where we're at on that one. And while I have legal or staff, if staff could come up and tell us what's the difference between a tweak and a change, how much leeway does the task force have in modifying maps submitted by citizens? What's our full charge
I'll
here?
give you the good lawyer answer, which is it depends. But it actually may be that Michelle Swindle could give us a better guidance on what would be considered a tweak versus a change, because there are going to be something that I might consider a tweak, which she could see would create a big cascade of problems, or maybe not problems, but create major changes that are necessary. I will say, to address your other point, you know, your charge from council is to select a, or an, to be correct grammatically, an initial map. So if it is the case that you all decide around the table that in addition to an initial map out of the ones that you have chosen for your top 9, that you may want to suggest that council take a look at taking the top half of this map and the bottom half of this map and potentially seeing if that would work, you could do that as a secondary recommendation. But I would advise you all that you need to do your charge, which is to select an initial map from the ones that the public has submitted.
Ms. Boyd has a question. All right. All right. So not much clarification on what's a tweak and a change. Right. Fernando, and then Fernando, why don't, do we have the scoring from last time of what maps were what, so we can see that? Just if you could put that for the public, Fernando.
Yes, sir. You had the scoring at your seats, and we can.
Yeah. Can you put that up for the public?
Someone would help me.
Put that up for the public and explain which maps got the most votes last time. Now, of course, we've taken public comment and hearing, so that may not be what we vote on today, but, you know, so let's just see what we have, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll go around the table, and I'll start to my left with Mr. Williams and go around, and then I'll save myself for last, because as the chair.
Let me see if I can summarize your current scoring. And then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make another attempt at answering your question about what constitutes tweaking, minor changes. First, you'll recall that we added the scores for Mr. Williams, who was not able to participate in an earlier meeting, and you decided at your January 13th public hearing to add 2 maps. V and T and V for a total of 9. And those are the 9 maps that our outside counsel reviewed for legal compliance. You can see the scores. Map X received by far the highest aggregate score from individual task force members. It's not to say that that represents a consensus. That's something for you to decide later in this meeting, but it did receive the highest aggregate score, 29. The next highest score was map Z with 19 points, and then you can see the maps that are highlighted in the yellow are the 9 maps that you selected for further research. So we hope that answers your question. As to the latitude that you have today, I think a good rule of thumb might be to consider only those changes that serve to preserve the integrity of neighborhoods or communities of interest. So if you select a particular map and find that it's imperfect in some way because it splits a neighborhood needlessly and doesn't require the ripple effects that are commonly associated with a large-scale change, then a minor boundary adjustment to keep a neighborhood intact, I think, would be entirely reasonable for the task force to undertake. Similarly, if a boundary as drawn on your preferred map seems to be arbitrary and a slight adjustment would cause it to align with a physical feature such as a railroad track or a waterway or something that's more logical, then that would also be, I think, a minor change that would be well within your purview to pursue. An example, a very good example, I think, of a substantive change, and one that many residents and task force members have asked us to explore, and which may fall into the category of what Ms. Guzman described, a secondary recommendation, would be taking the Como neighborhood and placing it either in District 6 or District 9. As it turns out, placing it in District 6 is less disruptive than placing it in District 9. But even placing it in District 6 would require shifting a total of 13 different neighborhoods among Districts 3, 6, and 9 in order to equalize populations and comply with all the other criteria. So even though you're thinking, I just want to move one neighborhood, Como, you're affecting 13 neighborhoods in the process. I think it would be reasonable to interpret that as a major change. Not to say that the city council couldn't consider it, they certainly could. But I would say that would fall in the category of what Ms. Guzman has described as a secondary recommendation. So what you could do is say, we favor map, whatever it is, with these minor modifications, but we also recommend to the council that if you wanted to make changes, that you consider the following change that would satisfy the interests of the Como neighborhood as expressed in various forms. So that's the way I would answer the question. I hope that makes sense, and I'd be glad to elaborate if you'd like.
No, thank you, Fernando. Thank you. No, anyone have questions of Fernando, Ms. Hermosillo?
As I look at the list of the high priority, the top 5 high priority criterion that the task force initially outlined, I guess in what, 2021? So I hear
the city council adopted, yes.
So I hear what you're saying about perhaps something that would affect as many as, say, 13 community neighborhoods, you know, some communities of interest could be a larger concern. But as I look at those top 5 high priority criterion, I can't help but feel like, isn't that essentially commensurate to another equally important concern where we talk about with adherence to the Voting Rights Act and that we don't want to create packing or fracking minority communities. And so I feel like, you know, we've got to be able to balance those. Because
This is all a balancing act. As Mr. Arnold has reminded us, compliance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is only one factor to consider. There are multiple factors.
Right.
We only asked him to look at legal compliance. That's only one of the factors. Obviously, it's the top of the list, but it's still only one factor.
But I just would ask my fellow task force members to be cognizant then of the top 5 high criteria.
And the top 5 warrant greater attention than do the other 5.
Right, as we probably inevitably enter a discussion about tweaks and what would be acceptable under a tweak, even if it feels like it's getting to a larger shift, it might still be considered a tweak when we consider the top criteria here.
Boyd?
Yeah, I think mine is in alignment with that because specifically we had a public hearing after we made selections. And so I think if we had people to come out and to share their perspectives and what's important to their neighborhoods, and then we don't move that forward, I feel like that was the disservice. And what was the point of inviting the public out to make further comments and to tell us, even having people come today. And I don't think right now, some of the things that we may suggest for consideration for the council, like we won't know right now what the impact will be. So how do we not make it unless someone is gonna literally do it now and show us what would happen?
I don't think your legal counsel or staff are telling you not to consider what the public has told you. I think what we're saying is that we're drawing a distinction, if you will, between a primary recommendation, which sticks to the letter of the resolution creating or reactivating this task force, and a secondary recommendation, which perhaps goes beyond a strict interpretation of that resolution. I will say, I think it's incumbent upon me to say that several city council members recently have reminded us, because they've heard that we're thinking about moving Como around and doing this and that of a major scale. They have reminded us that they gave us a certain charge and they expect us to comply with that charge. That is not to say that you couldn't make a primary recommendation purely in line with the resolution, but also make a secondary recommendation that goes beyond what you were asked to do. But at the very least, do what they asked you to do. I hope that makes sense.
Well, let me just see if I can provide clarity. If this is just hypothetical, this may not be the task force preference, but obviously MapX got the most votes the first round. Could the task force, and I'm not saying this is how it's going to turn out today, but could you do a Como bridge to X or to Z or to S? And could you show that illustratively or not? How would that look like?
Yes, we could. We could show you, only because we have such a skillful person as Michelle Swindle, we could show you a MapX hybrid that places Como in District 6, for example, and we could identify the 13 neighborhoods that would be affected and where they would go from what district to what district. We could show you that, and if you wanted to look at map Z or map S or any of the maps, we could show you that, and we could take as long as you like to look at the substantive changes as well as the minor changes.
Yeah, because, you know, we've heard a lot, right? We've heard Riverside needs to stay in one district. We've heard the far north Fort Worth communities, Park Glen, Summerfield's want to be in one district. We've heard by email that some of these other communities, Ryan Place, Fairmont, Mistletoe Heights, and Berkeley want to stay together. We've heard the Chisholm Trail Parkway communities, Como wants to be in a minority opportunity district. Obviously, we've heard about the Hispanic community wanting a second Hispanic opportunity district, and of course, we've heard from the African-American community, they want to preserve the minority opportunities they have. So, you know, there's a lot to consider. So, and yet we have to pick one map, and then I guess we could do additional recommendations. Ms. Boyd?
I guess I'm thinking, like, how do we decide, like, as a committee that we'll pick one map because it upholds one community of interest, but then saying we wouldn't make the recommendations, at least for the council to consider, because then how do we pick between which community?
I think what we got to do is look at the maps and see which one we believe accomplishes most of the criteria, not all of the, of the redistricting criteria is given to us, taking into account public input. For example, we know that the Como community wants to be in a minority opportunity. So is it possible to do a bridge to that? Unless you select their map, then we have to make a secondary recommendation is what I'm hearing staff.
Yes, sir.
We could pick map X, Z, or S and say secondary recommendations council should consider placing Como in a minority opportunity district, right, Fernando?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So you pick a base map, then you make additional.
I would suggest, yes, sir, I would suggest a three-step process, if it makes sense to Step one, go around the table, listen to everybody, continue to make reference to the scoring that you have conducted, and select your preferred map. Select a preferred map based on the criteria you've just discussed. Step two, refine that map so as to ensure that neighborhoods and communities of interest are intact and the boundaries are logical, and that you meet all the other criteria. So you can refine, we would call it an adjusted map, whatever. And step three, take into account other changes. So if you wanted to consider the multi-neighborhood working group, or consider Como, or consider Chisholm Trail, or any other argument that's been brought forth, that would be your secondary recommendation. In steps 1 and 2, you've refined your primary recommendation. In step 3, you would be discussing what you bring forth as a secondary recommendation, which arguably lies beyond the scope of what you were given as a charge, but I think is still relevant. And I would recommend that you proceed in that way.
All right, so we have, I guess, some insights. I'm not sure, that it's the ideal scenario because frankly, we are limited by the resolution. We really, in a perfect world, we could start with a base map and start, modifying it to the way that we want, but we don't have that authority under the resolution by council. Council is going to do that at the next level because what's going to happen after we submit a map to them, along with additional recommendations, they will take that map. They may produce maps themselves again and hear from the public because ultimately under the city charter, the council has the ultimate authority to vote on the council map as duly elected representatives of the people. In other cities, they have an independent redistricting commission. That was not the choice made here in Fort Worth. So this is the process we have. Yes, Mr. Williams.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask this. I've just kind of listened to what is being said and that kind of thing. But one example, we're talking about the Como district. I would like to see the Como district, the people in that district remain the same. But here's what I would also like to know. The map, if we take X for an example, does X already include portions of Como in it? Map X?
Como appears in District 3 under Map X, which is where it currently lies.
Okay.
And as I understand it, and I'm happy to stand corrected.
What about Z? What about Map Z?
I'd have to defer to Ms. Swindle.
Beg pardon?
I'd have to ask Michelle Swindle to help me with your question.
Now, I guess the thing that I'm concerned about is the numbers. Now, if I remember correctly, after working in Como myself, Como is really not that large. Como is really not that large. And you're not talking about no 10,000 people in that particular area. So what I'm talking about is looking at the numbers and see if it might be possible to add the rest of the Como area that's not there now, put in the district where they are now. Because you're not talking about just an awful lot of, Como is really not that large unless it's expanded since the last time that I worked out there. We'll talk about right at the creek, and maybe they have some bound areas.
Mr. Williams, if we understand your point, if the map that you select as your preferred map does not include all of Como, it'd be a very simple task to redraw the boundaries and include all of Como in a single district, if that's the intent.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's easily done. That's easily done.
To me, that's an easier way to do it because if we're talking about numbers, Como is really not that large, and
that's easily done. I don't think that's what Como is asking, though. I think they're asking to be placed in a minority opportunity district, which District 3 is not.
Swindle? Hold on, let Ms. Swindle speak.
For clarification, I'm not sure if this one, in Map Z, in Plan Z, Como is currently in District 9, which is not a minority opportunity district. In Plan X, they're placed in District 3, which is also not a minority opportunity district.
Okay, but you say that they're split in one of them, right?
I don't think it was in X it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Coleman said he would like to make some adjustments in order to make sure.
That was for Stop 6.
We can look at the map and get confirmation. I mean, if you want to look at Map X, we can pull up Map X and see exactly where Como is. in Map
Looking at
X.
the figures, that's what my whole thing is.
Pull up Map X and Z.
We can do that. If you want to do that now, we can do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just want to get clarity, just for clarification.
So yes, you want to do it now?
Yeah, just pull up Map X and Z. Yes.
I wanted to add one point if I may.
Yes, Mr. Schur.
Undivided communities of interest. Communities of interest have boundaries. Those boundaries may or may not, as they got onto the map, be exactly what the communities thought they were going to be. We've heard from Como that there's part of Como, according to the community of interest, that really Como doesn't consider to be part of the community of interest. So when we look at these split communities of interest, they're not always really split quite significantly. In addition, there are communities of interest as small as 30 and as large as what, 70 some odd thousand. And,
Yeah.
and, you know, so when we look at the overall significance on equity and voter participation, things like that, you know, a community of interest of 30 is, we don't want to break them apart, no, but they don't have quite the same significance as some of the mid-sized ones where you have neighborhoods or groups of neighborhoods. When you start getting these massive areas, like the proposed communities of interest on the north, you can say my community of interest is the council district that I want. So I think that the split boundaries is something that is not so important. But in addition to that, I noticed in working with some of the, in my own attempt to do a map, that you could take two different maps that were all almost virtually identical, and you couldn't find why one was treated as splitting a community of interest and another was not. You don't know until you get the scoring. It could be just a little teeny tiny thing. And the same is true on contiguity. I looked at several maps where contiguity was found and not found. The non-contiguous parts that would knock one out didn't knock others out. So the scoring is really not the most important thing here. What's important is the substance. So
All right, hold on. I'll come back to you, Mr. Wendell. Ms. Wendell's going to show where Como is, and what map is this, Ms. Wendell?
X.
All right, so X, it's in District 3, right? All of it, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then look at map Z.
Z is UHC, is that correct? I'm going through the.
Map X, it says it's split on the criteria, so it's not split?
I think is, to Mr. Schur's point, that this house, there's one block that's
Okay, so
split
then
out of
that
it.
should not be there.
So technically it is, but that I would consider a minor adjustment that we can do to keep it intact.
Okay, let me ask, what?
This section.
Your line that's drawn, the yellow line that goes to the green line, and it goes back up and to going back, I'd say going back east. And then it comes down and then goes back out west, right in there. What's that?
That is how Como was drawn. The yellow outline, go ahead.
That is East Libby Avenue, which is a subset of Como. I think anybody looking at Como would see that that's just a part of the neighborhood, but it has a separate neighborhood association that happens to represent it. So it is not an active neighborhood association, thank you. And in fact, they're no longer registered with the city. So I think you could say that map is not entirely accurate. You could take out that little wedge and just draw the yellow line straight down along the eastern edge of Como.
And does that represent the Como area that we are talking about?
Yes, sir. That's Como.
That would take care of that little area right there.
It appears the only adjustment that would need to be made is what Ms. Swindle just described. That small block just east of Lake Como, just a little block, would have to be placed in District 6 instead of District 9. That's about as minor a tweak as you can make to keep that neighborhood intact.
What I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to get in my mind, whereas with Como being in a district by itself, that's all in one district.
With that little tweak, it would be all in one district, District 3.
Okay, then would that satisfy the people in Como?
What you heard is that they want to be located within a minority opportunity district.
Well, the point is that we've got to understand something. I do. In setting up these 10 districts, we've got to make sure that we do the best thing for all the citizens of Fort Worth. And we've got to do the numbers right. We've got to do the people right. And we've got to make sure that what we're doing is for the city of Fort Worth too. That's another thing. It's not just for those districts. Every district that we have should be a representative of Fort Worth, and every citizen in Fort Worth, and no matter what district, they should be for Fort Worth. Now, that to me is what we are supposed to be all about. Now, and I know that we have these neighborhoods. I'm the president of a neighborhood association, but that doesn't make any difference as far as I'm concerned. My whole thing has been for what's good for Fort Worth. And that's the way we have voted, that's the way we've come through. So I'm looking at it from this point, so I'm just trying to see how we can satisfy the Fort, or these citizens of Como. I'm not talking too loud.
No, we had an accident. We're good. Okay. Oh, no accident. Near accident.
Yeah.
All right. No, I hear you, Mr. Williams. Let's do this. Let's finish showing where Como is on Z. Then I hear, we know that Como wants to be in a minority opportunity district. That is their request. The only map that does that right now, well, there's, we'll get into the discussion and staff can tell us which maps do that. If we recommend a map that does not have Como in a minority opportunity district, that can be a secondary recommendation along with a map. All right, you can recommend a map and say, by the way, council, please put Como in a minority opportunity, or look at putting Como in a minority opportunity. But we're not there yet. We're still in the early discussion stage. So let's get into where the task force is. And, you know, we could start by eliminating maps, but I don't know, we'll probably be here a long night. Let's just go around the round table, get people's thoughts, and then try to narrow to I think we can narrow to the number of maps and go, because I think we have very many diverse views. And after this, I'll just go around the table because I'd like to hear from you. And then we'll figure out a process to narrow it down to one map and what recommendations, because we are limited. We can't really start playing with maps and start moving neighborhoods around because that affects all these. We can do tweaks.
I feel like this process, if we watch this happen now, I don't know that it'll be very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just going to.
Yeah, it'll just get, yeah. I think we need to pick a base map
and make
and
the
recommendations. Yeah. So when I go around the table, just tell me what you think is your favorite base map, and maybe give me a secondary one. Which one's your top choice too, and then we can go from there and narrow it down. If you want to go to top three, that's fine too. You know, let's do top three, and then we can have staff keep track of it and tell us, and that'll eliminate a bunch of maps, right? Then we can focus our discussion on the final three.
That's how Barry defined it originally.
Yeah, after this, we'll take a break because we're about to get into some discussion. And I think that's what we'll do. I'll ask you, each task force, give me your top three choices, and then we'll eliminate from the 9 to get down to 3, and then we'll go from there. Because we do need to have some structure. Mr. DeVito is very sharp over there asking for the structure.
Are there any visuals?
No, we see there that all of Como in that one, in Z, Como is in a minority opportunity district in District 9, right? No? Oh, 9 is not minority opportunity under that map. I forgot the map Z in the United Hispanic Council map puts Como in a different District 9. I got you. All right, let's take a break. I think we know that Como is impacting these maps, but the question is, you know, Como wants to be in a minority opportunity district, and can you do a bridge? All right, thank you. Well, let's take a 10-minute recess because it's going to be a while here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and call us back to order after our recess. We heard a lot of discussion today, and we've heard a lot of public comment about Como wanting to be in a minority opportunity district. And I think several task force members have also asked staff about it. So I'm going to have Michelle provide an illustrative example of what I would call a Como bridge or Como hybrid looks, where Como could be, let's say, and this is just a hypothetical, but again, the task force could recommend MapX and make a recommendation for Como. So Ms. Swindle, if you could explain how this would work.
I actually had 2 versions. So the original.
Make sure your mic is on.
Can you hear me now? So the original request was to meet public comment of having increasing the Hispanic minority opportunity district in addition to putting Como in a minority opportunity district. So this is using Plan X, which was the highest ranked version, and it takes Como as well as Alamo Heights and Sunset Heights into District 6 and connects them down to District 6. It was the least impactful way that I found. Mr. Schur had his own version that does something similar. All of the impacted neighborhoods are on the spreadsheet that you have, and there's a highlighted area of the changes in which neighborhoods are impacted. But it takes this section. In the original map T, it had District 3 hooking around Como and coming through the middle. If you want, I can show it as well for comparison.
Sure. The more info, the better.
You say that. We have a lot of data.
We will narrow the discussion. This just shows you how difficult it is to adjust maps on the fly or in a live meeting. I mean, and we are being public and transparent and open. And again, we can't pick a map like this. We can submit the base map and say, council, please consider putting Como in a minority opportunity district. That could be part of our recommendation. First, we have to agree on a base map.
What was that map that you had up there when you first started talking that put Como in District 6? I believe that did you have that just a few minutes ago?
There's 3 options that put Como in District 6. There's this one, which starts with map X and makes the adjustment for Como.
Okay.
There's Mr. Schur's version. Brian Irvin. Yep, it goes all the way along Brian Irvin, cuts.
And this is illustrative. I mean, we can't vote on this map that she's showing that combines X and T. She's just showing you how potentially a hypothetical would work and may or may not work. Ultimately, the council will have to decide that.
That is correct. And it swaps the section of District 3 that was to the east over here and gives City View to District 3. And on map X, I consolidated a few of the communities of interest that were split. The one that's highlighted is South Hills. Both South Hills and Rosemont were divided. So using the boundary, I trued those up. And that was also just an adjustment to make things more cohesive for the defined or the registered communities of interest.
Yeah, you can see how challenging it is. You move one entire neighborhood, even though it's a compact neighborhood, into another district, that impacts the numbers, and you got to do some more shifting, and so it's very, very tricky.
So this is how it does. I can run.
Actually, it does, because that makes District 6 a smaller population and projected to be one of the big boroughs.
Yep. So all of the inherent tests run. And I did create a spreadsheet using the same metrics that the rest of them had. I ran that y'all have. There's both the original.
Yeah. Michelle is very talented in drawing maps.
I have 20 years experience. So.
All right, so, yeah, no, Ms. Kennedy, go ahead. You can make your comments on the record.
I think it does. I think it helps to strengthen our district, and it keeps the Chisholm Trail, all the things that we've talked about still intact, but allowing Como to still be in District 6. And there's a clear dividing line. Let me be very clear on what I'm saying. We're using a roadway of Brian Irvin to make that distinction.
All right, so let's do this then. We're gonna rank our top 3 base maps.
Can you put up map T, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
You had started.
Go ahead.
This is map T. So map T has District 3 encompassing Como and coming all the way down. So this gets rid of that and fills in the middle, so they're not weaved together, if that makes sense.
And Brown Aaron is still the dividing line on map T?
To the west of District 6, yes.
Ms. Powell, you have any more questions? And I'll go to Mr. Schur.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Schur?
Well, conceptually, what's different about Como's map T, and it's a really important difference, is that you have an entire district, which is District 3, which is bisected almost by, by the Como neighborhood all the way down through its entire length. It looks funny. And but one of the things, I had voted for map T before because I was very interested to find out whether the bridging technique, where you use a length of freeway to connect two parts of a district that are otherwise separated, would be okay. And I do believe that, Mr. Arnold, you're still here, that you basically said that's okay in this situation. This is one of the maps that passed muster. So that is a technique which the council can use. My concept, which I shared with various people, was that it might be better to just do like a three-way shift where you move a patch here, and a patch there. What we learned from that was there are a lot of ripple effects. And so that's just, I will leave it at that because I can't tell how many ripple effects there were, but it would, what I had proposed would have resulted in many, many changes on the map, and it would have moved neighborhoods, just as Michelle was saying.
Mr. Question.
Williams?
Yeah. Okay, so by shifting and putting Como, the way you have it arranged there in District 6, that automatically takes in all of the interests and concerns of the Como district, right? And what basic effect did it have on District 6 per se? As far as numbers and that type thing, what did it do to them?
It increased them as a minority opportunity district. I'm not sure which of these tables correspond, so give me a moment.
It increases it by about 1% from, if you're just looking at map X, it increases the 8%.
Are we talking about the numbers now? Or are you talking about the VAP? But all the rest of the things are clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that takes care of that then. No.
Okay, any other questions of Ms. Swindle?
Yeah, I have.
Yes, Ms. Powell.
With this hybrid to map X, putting in a new district, 11, how much did you cut down District 8?
I didn't touch any.
Oh, excuse me. It condensed District 8, not per se to you, not per se you, but the author of the map.
So you're asking how District 8 in map X and District 8 in map T are different?
No, map T is fine in map X.
So you're asking how the two of those are different?
I'm clear on T, it's map X.
From the original, let's see. I know it cuts off the bottom section of.
What is the bottom section?
The southern half. Because in our current District 8, it comes all the way down south of 20 and down here. And so in map X, south of 20 and entirely west, all of this is District 11. So in our current, District 8 comes down south and touches District 6. I'm honestly not sure what map T does. I think it keeps all of this intact and it just puts two new districts up north. Is that
Yes,
what
it does.
There's a few of them, so I apologize.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so then that's the main difference, is this puts the new Hispanic district as District 11 in the south corridor along 35 and 20.
Yeah, the new Hispanic district without any data for us, those who are able to vote, VAT.
Correct, we're just talking population, correct.
Any other questions of Ms. Swindle? Mr. Bradshaw, put on the mic.
Correct. So
What was the question?
the reason for having the two separate tables is this morning I was looking at map X and where it split communities of interest. And so the new table aligns South Hills and Rosemont into a district 11 or 9. So the table that is highlighted, it would be the new numbers went on the current map, because this is the COI. So the fact that, I'm pretty sure this is South Hills? Yes. So South Hills, which is highlighted in yellow, is fully intact in District 9, whereas in the original map X and in the map that you have the printout of, it's divided. Both South Hills and Rosemont, which is directly north of it, map X divides both of those. So this version puts them and keeps them intact in a different district.
Yep.
Yes.
Ms. Boyd?
I do have okay, so on map X, does it move, is it stop 6? Does it move stop 6 into District 8, or does stop 6 remain in District 5?
I think it's District 8. Let's see.
Okay, because we can also make those recommendations to keep
Stop 6 in District 5.
stop 6 in District 5, because that's something else that we saw.
Can you find it on the map? I'm not entirely sure. Is it here?
I think based on what I looked at from on this side, what I can see
Okay.
clear is moves it into District 8.
So this version, you're correct.
Right.
Map X has stop 6 in District 8.
So that's something else if we choose map X
Yes.
to note.
Yes.
So in theory.
Think about that.
Yeah. No, that's a good observation. Stop 6 has historically been in District 5.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So to migrate.
What happened that you had to move stop 6 into District 8 by moving the one move back over there, or what?
No, the original Map X had stop 6 in District 8. Map X as presently configured without any modifications, obviously does not have Como in District 6 and does not have stop 6 in District 5. So Map X, if that is the base map, you would make additional recommendations to put Como in 6 and to put stop 6 in 5.
So you can't.
If that was the recommendation.
You can't just put stop 6 into 5. You have to make a swap. Otherwise, the population is out.
Yeah, you could make that recommendation to council.
Correct. So there'd
to
have
look
to
at
be
swaps.
an additional change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I anticipate that no matter what map the task force recommends, there are going to be changes and tweaks at the next level with additional public input.
I agree.
Any other questions of Ms. Swindle or staff? And then we get into our rankings. I think the easiest way to do this, since there's 9 maps, rank your 3, and we'll go around the dice. And
I have one question.
Yes, Ms. Powell.
In map T, stop 6 is in District 5. Is that not correct?
I think so.
It was,
No, I'm talking about the original map. Map T.
Let me confirm. I think it is.
That's come on Nettles map. And Como,
Am I wrong? Correct. It is entirely in District 6.
and it also allows Como to be in a minority district. Is that not correct?
That is accurate, yes.
All right. Any other questions of Ms. Swindle? All right, so we're going to go ahead and, Mr. Williams, I'm going to start with you. Go and if your thoughts on the maps, and then staff keep track of the comments, and then let's see if we can narrow this down to 3 maps.
I'm basically confused now. Oh, you start messing with District 5.
Right.
Okay, so I need to make sure. Where are we in District 5 now? In which one? T or X or Z?
Show him map Z, see where in map Z, district, stop 6. We've established that stop 6 is in District 5 in map T. Where is stop 6 in map Z? We've established that stop 6 presently is in District 8 in map X.
District 8 is in map T.
Okay, so.
We have to make the recommendation for map Z.
Yeah.
But in map T, stop 6 is in District 5,
Right.
as well as Como is in District 6, where they want to be a majority community.
And I understand we may have differences of opinion. Ultimately, the council is probably going to make changes, all right? So whatever map is picked, I believe council will make changes, all right? So we're just trying to narrow it down. I know it's going to be difficult because our charge is to give them an initial map to work with. And then they have 3 choices. They can modify that map, they can not follow that map, and they can do their own map again. Those are the 3 choices council has. All right. All right, so if Mr. Williams, you still need more time to validate, I'll just, I can start with Ms. Boyd. Ms. Boyd, I'll go this way with you.
Yeah.
Sure.
TXZ? All right, so.
I did not rank those. I just wanted to say that I think that Como should move into my recommendations are Como moving to District 6 and ensuring that communities like Stop 6 remain in District 5. I think it was Historic Southside remains in District 8, and of course Riverside in 1 district, which that happens already in that. But
all right, so Ms. Boyd said T, X, and Z. Obviously, you heard Stop 6 stays in 5, Riverside stays together, and then Como in District 6. All right, Mr. Norris.
Okay, I'm gonna rank M as my number 1 choice, and then X as number 2, and I'll put S as number 3. And the reason I went with M, I feel like we are closer to X than we first appear as far as minority opportunity districts. The percentages are not dramatically different, and so there's still great opportunity to add a second Hispanic council member, and so I feel like there's that opportunity. But the lines make sense, the way that they're drawn, and so that's the reason I've got M ranked number 1. As far as I would just say too, as far as the Como Bridge, I'm really hesitant on the Como Bridge, and the reason for that is just because of. It's very unique the way that it's geographically located in and amongst neighborhoods, and so you really do have to, I don't want to use the word gerrymander, but you really do have to get creative to draw the map the way it is. And what we've seen is that even in District 6, and you've made this point a couple of times, that it's not a foregone conclusion. This is a seat held by, Jungus Jordan for 14 years or whatever it was up until this most recent election. And so we may squint and draw lines this way, and then Como still end up not being represented by a minority council member. And I know that's not what we're trying to ensure, but we're kind of drawing it in a way, thinking that, oh, this will be so great because they will be able to be represented by a minority. And that may be true for the short term, but in the long term, we are having to really maneuver to do that. And I worry about that because of, and I know that there's been things at the county level and things at the state level that have contributed to Como feeling disenfranchised. And so this is an effort to combat that. And I get that, I respect that. But I live in a neighborhood not too far from Como, and we're in the same district right now, in District 3. And I drive through Como almost at least 3 times a week on Horn Street. And when there's potholes on Horn Street, it affects me. It doesn't affect people down near Crowley. And so there are things about our local interests that are aligned, that mine are aligned with Como, that are not the same at the very bottom of the south of the city. And so I think it's a benefit for the look. I know we had one public comment that said it's not a beauty contest, and I agree with that. But there is a smell test or an eye test to the way the lines are drawn. You know, there's a famous Supreme Court case that talks about, I don't know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it, right? And I don't know how to define gerrymandering, but I know it when I see it. And when you've got lines that are drawn up trying to connect a totally different part of the city to a different district, that feels like gerrymandering to me. And even though the result feels good right now, or it looks like it might have this real benefit, we don't know what's going to happen in the next cycle. And there may be this ripple effect where we're creating a map that just doesn't make sense to the eye test. So that's why I would speak against the Como Bridge. I will say that I think map T is even more egregious than this version that Ms. Swindle has put together, but it still is, we really are having to kind of hold our head a certain way to squint at it to make that work, and I just don't think that that's wise.
So what were your 3, Mr. Norris?
Yeah, so they were M and then X with some modifications.
Okay.
And then S is the third ranked, but M would be my top choice.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. All right, let's move on to Mr. Schur.
My first 2 choices are Z and X in no particular order, and that is because I believe that both of those 2 maps are, first of all, they create the necessary, to my way of thinking, second Hispanic Opportunity District, and because those 2 maps are each adaptable to provide a Como bridge if the council should want to do it. And it's not the same as the map T bridge because it doesn't cut a district in half. So it looks a little bit better. I mean, it still looks funny with that duck's head sticking up. But so the X and Z are my favorite 2, and I'm really having a hard time even picking a 3.
And you don't have to, I guess. If you don't like any other map, pick your top 2. And if you only like one, just say one.
No, those are the 2 that I think I want to.
All right, well, I'll go back to Ms. Boyd and Mr. Norris since I just made that clarification to be fair.
You just changed the rules.
No, I'm sorry. I'll go back to Ms. Boyd, and you can pick up to 3. You don't have to. You can pick 1. You can pick 2. All right, let's just be clear. So back to Ms. Boyd and back to Mr.
I'll just keep we can keep rolling.
All right.
It'll
All right, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. Bradshaw.
Sure. X is definitely my favorite. I actually just want to pick 1. Does that give it heavier ranking as opposed to picking 3?
1, and any modifications appeal to you?
Yeah. So just like Ms. Boyd, Dr. Boyd said, I definitely would like to see Como and take that bridge down to District 6. And not to disagree with you, but potholes are one thing, but the people of Como have asked for this, right? And so I appreciate you have a pothole issue, and I would hope the city of Fort Worth would take care of potholes, but their votes are getting canceled out being in District 3 right now. And that's if they say they want their vote to count more, and that's how they have asked for it, I mean, who are we to say no? And I'm just going to say, United Riverside, and then making sure if stop 6 is historically D5 and that's what D5 wants, then, same goes with the Como issue. And I like X better than Z because it keeps Fairmount, Ryan Place, and Berkeley, but it takes the Hemp Hill Heights and pushes it to the Opportunity District, which is where I believe it should be.
Shaw. Mr. DeVito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. As the representative from District 7 North area, I would favor plans Q or U. However,
I also like Plan X. I think the North area residents like Plan X. I'm definitely not insensitive to the pleas of the Como folks, so however this shakes out, they should definitely be in the district as they have requested. So the modified Plan X actually looks probably the best. I wish I had seen that come through earlier. But those would be the three. If somebody put a gun to my head and said choose three, I'd go QUX.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito. Ms. Hermosillo.
I'm just going to prioritize two, maps X and Z. More specifically on map X, that would be with some of the proposed revision or adjustments that we've just discussed, to include Como, to put stop 6 or to keep it in District 5. Even between those two, and I want to make a comment that those are really, there were really only ever three that truly kind of undeniably create or make a strong case for the creation of a second Hispanic Opportunity District. And if that was my only concern, then actually I would have prioritized I all along, because it makes the most compelling case for that. However, and I guess to echo a comment that fellow task force member Linda Kennedy has stated a few times, I do want to help us create the map that I think is going to best serve the residents of Fort Worth across its interestingly drawn boundaries that comprise our city limits. And with that, I think X and Z create the most realistic opportunity for that. Thank you to staff to have already even created a visual that's been presented to us here just a few minutes ago that even further, I think, makes that possibility a reality. And I was also encouraged to see people from District 6, also residents here at the table, also in favor of what those proposed revisions could look like and how that could not dilute the African-American voting age population there, but also take into account some other interests on the south and southwest side. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hermosillo. Ms. Powell?
Yes, my observation is that we should choose a map that represent the entire city of Fort Worth, or take in consideration the entire city of Fort Worth as a whole. You have community of interest all over the city, and everybody has to work together. It's going to require a give and take, and I don't believe that a give and take should only be in certain sectors and not all over. And because of that, to me, map T is what represent the community of interest in diverse areas, as well as Como, which I am very familiar with. Grandparents lived out there. And it makes sense for the city as a whole. African Americans should not be, so to speak, compromised because of Hispanics are not getting out and voting, or they're not of certain age, and then we decide to just hope and create a district for them in the southeast area of the city, where, again, as I said before, you got 76% of the city growth has been in the northwest area. That area don't want to give up nothing or adjust to anything, but yet and still, I believe there is a certain limit for a council person to be over so many, I guess, thousands of people. And I don't see Firestone being able to continue to one person manage that. It's let alone it's hard enough for the mayor. She has managed the whole entire city. But at the same time, map T represent the give and take all over Fort Worth.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Ms. Kennedy?
I'm going to advocate for X. I feel like that it really takes into account all of the populations. It does what we've wanted to do from the beginning, which is creates an additional Hispanic Opportunity District. I really would have liked us to be able to find a way to even increase that percentage of voting age for Hispanics even greater, but we couldn't find that. But if council were able to, that would be great to increase that voting age percentage just a smidge in that new District 11. Mr. Norris, thank you for pointing out the fact that doing a Como bridge is going to make that look a little gerrymandered, because when I first looked at Map T, my first thought was, oh goodness, that doesn't really meet that one criteria that we have. But as Mr. Bradshaw said, the most important thing here was we listened to our neighbors in Como who said, we don't feel like we're being heard, we don't feel seen, and that makes us feel like we are not equal to the rest of our citizens. And so if we in District 6 can welcome those neighbors to us, because at first I thought, well, like you said, we're not driving on the same potholes. Our kids down in District 6 go to Crowley schools. They go to Fort Worth ISD schools. We weren't sharing those same things. But if they said, hey, if we can share a council person and we're going to feel like we're all better neighbors, then yes, let's welcome them in. So I hope that the council will find a way to use Map X or whichever map they do and put Como with us at District 6.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Herrera?
Thank you. My first choice will still remain as 6. I'll go back and just quickly reiterate what I'd said early on with Mr. Arnold, I believe, with the law firm, that there is an opportunity with the Hispanic district. There's 3 opportunities in Map S. There is one dominant with the Black community, and then an opportunity in District 8 for Blacks as well. And when you total that up, there's definitely a minority opportunity there. So that would be my number 1. Number 2 is U, and number 3 is X. Going back and stating about Map S, it is Como. I want to listen to what they have to say, and I want to listen to what everyone has to say. Let me be very clear, to try and make as cohesive communities as possible. I think that's very important. So in Map S, there might be a recommendation there for the city council to tweak that, because Como is not in the right district based on where they would like to be. So that would be of consideration for Map S. And I do want to make sure that Riverside is whole in all of these. And then some of the other districts that have voiced their opinion, that keeps them cohesive. So those are my 3 choices.
Thank you, Ms. Herrera. And now, Mr. Williams?
Yes, I would just like to take T, X, and Z, and want to make sure that Como is taken care of, and that District 5 is taken care of, and I think Riverside and the rest of them are in these. So I think that we're in good shape there. So T, X, and Z is one with the modification by the council.
First, it's not been an easy process to evaluate all these maps, because I have to say I've been very impressed. I've been doing or following redistricting since the 2000 census. So it's actually this is my 3rd round with redistricting. I can say this was the one with the most maps ever submitted by citizens. And it may be 2 things, I think. Evolution of technology, right? Nowadays, it's easier for citizens to create maps. 2, contrary to what has been said, I do think the council, the task force, city staff did make a very good effort at outreach. And it did first by establishing the criteria that was adopted early this year, and then again with the new council. They didn't have to do it. They got elected. They could have drawn the maps, and they did create maps, and they submitted maps as individual citizens and the council map to this task force. And then we took input, and we took when we first were looking at the maps, we did rank X number one. I had a different take, but I believe map X is the consensus map. It does need to be tweaked. We do need to make sure that Stop 6 stays in District 5. We do need to make sure that Como is in a minority opportunity district. Riverside, I think, is together in map X. I think the communities in the south side that wanted to stay together can stay together under map X. It does need tweaking. And, you know, the other map that I liked was Z. But what I'm hearing, so those would be the ones, Z and X and Z. But X really is in my opinion, the one that I've heard that has the most consensus. And I just, you know, we have a historic opportunity in Fort Worth. With these boundaries, you know, right now, as pointed out, we have the city of Fort Worth has its most diverse council ever. It's also its youngest council ever. And I do believe the future is bright for Fort Worth. And this is still a continuing process. I wish we would have given more latitude because we have heard from a lot of citizens. I wish we would have been able to do more tweaks, more changes, and submit a map that incorporate all these concerns, but we don't have that latitude. So I'm in favor of map X strongly now with these revisions or recommendations for revisions, and map Z was my secondary map. So with that, I'll let staff come up here and tell us, if you've summarized, Fernando, what it looks like, and then from there, we'll narrow it down and see if this task force can come down to a final map and recommendations. Ms. Boyd.
I just want to make note too, when we give our summation, that the people up north, when they told us the maps, they also said X. So I think that should be included to say that we listen to the.
Yeah, that's a true point. Up in the north area, we Park Glen, Summerfields went together. The way I view this is when we went to 10-1, and that's the other thing I want to make clear. We wanted to account for the growth in Fort Worth, so I always thought that when we went from 8-1 to 10-1, the North Fort Worth area of the city would get a council district. And also, I always believed that with the growth in the Hispanic community, there'd be another Hispanic opportunity district. So I think we can get there. I think that was why voters in 2016 approved going to 10-1. And I think we can get there with the base map of X with some more tweaks. Fernando.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will endeavor to summarize your loose consensus at this point, and then you can entertain appropriate motions to take official action. It appears by our count that considering without applying the Bradshaw rule of giving heavier weight to those who only selected one map, we had 10 task force members identify map X as one of their top three, if not their number one map. That is the only map that has more than 4 votes. Map X is followed by Z with 4 votes, T with 3, and the others receiving votes M, Q, S, and U. So by virtue of your informal discussion, it appears that map X is clearly your preferred choice, and as close to a full consensus as any group of 11 leaders is likely to reach. And of course, you explained some modifications that you would like to see. So you begin with conceivably begin with map X as your preferred map, your base map, as Mr. Chairman described it. And then you would contemplate your primary recommendation being to select map X with what we would describe as minor adjustments to unify the Como neighborhood. And as you'll recall, that only requires one block just east of the lake, and we will correct our neighborhood database map so as to eliminate East Libby Avenue, which is no longer registered. That was just an obsolete designation. So we will correct that base map. So the primary recommendation would adjust map X to unify Como, to unify South Hills, and to unify Rosemont. Those are the neighborhoods recommended by Mr. Calderon, I believe. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. These are the minor adjustments in your preferred map X. And these are adjustments that can be made, we believe, within the charge that was given to you by the council, without dispute. Because all you're doing is unifying neighborhoods, not moving them around, just unifying them. Your secondary recommendation would be to revise your proposed map, to asking the council to, in their work sessions, to revise your proposed map X as adjusted by placing Como and Stop 6 in the council districts that their leaders would prefer and have expressed to you their desire to have. And so that would put Como in District 6 with the resulting ripple effects that would cause a shift in a total of 13 different neighborhoods among Districts 3, 6, and 9. But that's inevitable in the case of a substantive change such as shifting Como to map 6. And for your information, the affected neighborhoods would include Clear Fork, Como, Overton Woods, and River Hills, all moving from the proposed 3 to the proposed 6. Foster Park and Overton Park would move from the proposed 3 to the proposed 9. Bel Air Park North, City View, Hawthorne Park, Meadows West, and Quail Ridge Estates would move from the proposed 6 to the proposed 3. And Alamo Heights and Sunset Heights would move from the proposed 9 to the proposed 6. So those are all the ripple effects that are caused by the shift of Como into District 6. Similarly, you would propose in your secondary recommendation that we shift Stop 6 into its traditional home in District 5. That also will have ripple effects. And we don't happen to have a map right now that depicts it, but we will produce a map to convey to the council as an illustration of how the council could shift Stop 6 into District 5. The main reasons that you've given for selecting map X, which I think you'd want to elaborate to the city council when Chairman Espino gives his report to the council a week from tomorrow, on February 1st, would include the fact that map X, with those minor adjustments, according to the technical analysis conducted by our own staff, fully meets all 10 of the redistricting criteria used to evaluate proposed maps. Furthermore, according to the legal analysis performed by our outside counsel, Bickerstaff, the map creates 6 minority opportunity districts. District 2 is classified as a strong Hispanic district. This is the Bickerstaff characterization, and I think that Mr. Arnold was the first to say that these assessments are rather nuanced and carry some degree of subjectivity. But I think we would all acknowledge that Mr. Arnold is widely recognized as an authority on the subject, and we would give great deference to his judgment. So District 2 is a strong Hispanic district. Districts 1/11 and 8 also create opportunity districts for Hispanics. Districts 5 and 8 are strong African-American districts in the opinion of our outside counsel. And District 6 also creates opportunity to elect African-Americans and Hispanics. Certainly map X is strong generally in creating minority opportunity districts, whether Hispanic or African American. Another reason that you've given is that map X with the adjustments, creates a high degree of compliance with respect to communities of interest, keeping those communities of interest within single council districts. According to the initial analysis of MapX, we'll need to run a quick check. This will actually get better. It contains 83% of the communities of interest within single districts. That figure will increase as we unify Como, South Hills, and Rosemont. In particular, it unifies Riverside and some of the other neighborhood alliances that have asked the task force to keep them within a single district. And finally, I think it's important to note that many residents from all parts of Fort Worth, northeast, south, and west, have expressed support for MapX as the preferred map. And I think those are the main reasons that you've given for selecting your X as your preferred base map, from which you would make those minor adjustments, and from there, you would recommend as a secondary recommendation that the city council consider changing Como and Stop 6 in their deliberations.
So procedurally then, do we want to vote on the base map first and then vote on the recommendations on Como and Stop 6 separately? Is that how we want to do it?
You could, unless you want to make just one motion that captures everything we've just described.
All right, Ms. Boyd, and then I'll come to anyone else.
That was me saying one motion.
One motion? All right, Ms. Boyd, make the motion.
Okay, so Dr. Whitney Boyd I move that we recommend to the city council map X with the modifications that have been.
To unify Como,
Okay, sure.
South Hills, and Rosemont.
To unify Como, South Hills, and Rosemont. And then secondary recommendations of moving Como to District 6 and Stop 6 remaining in District 5.
Second to that motion.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Mr. Norris?
Well, so I'm in favor of map X. I've already talked about the concerns with the Como Bridge, so I would love to be able to vote for map X without voting for the Como Bridge. But the part of the reason that I feel like I can support map X is some minor tweaking that would become moot if we did the Como Bridge. And so I feel like that bears a little bit of discussion, or that's kind of part of my support, so.
Well, do we want to get a unanimous? I mean, obviously, a majority votes. If we want more consensus, we could just vote on MapX with modifications, then vote on the.
That's fine.
I mean, Ms. Boyd, you're the maker of the motion. Do you want to? All right, let's just vote on it. And Mr. Norris, you'll have to, I guess, the pleasure of the motion maker is to move forward the vote. And you, as a matter of principle, can vote against it or not. All right. All in favor of the motion made by Dr. Boyd and seconded by Mr. Williams with all the modifications, primary, secondary, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Norris? All right, motion carries. So, thank you. Yes.
Excuse me.
The secretary wants to see hands because it's got to be a record vote.
Okay.
We have Mr. Norris abstaining in favor. Ms. Powell, what is your vote? Abstention or nay or yay?
Nay.
All right, so we have, now you got it? All right. All the task force members and staff, it's not an easy process. And let me say, this process is going to continue because eventually a neighborhood, once they look at this map, may say they want other tweaks and modifications. So when we go to council, MapX, even with these modifications, they may or may not do the Como, it's there. So I understand, Mr. Norris. Let the record reflect that Mr. Norris did support MapX with minor modifications, but expressed his concerns fully on the Como Bridge in terms of what that would do to the rest of the map. So thank you. It's been a pleasure and honor to serve with you. You've represented our communities well from all over the city, and you've all been open-minded, professional, and civil, and the city council did a great job in appointing y'all to this task force, and we're going to continue this, and you as a private citizen can continue to come to these public meetings with the council, and I think you are now at least some of the most informed and educated citizens on redistricting. We hope to see you again in 10 years. I'm just joking. Mr. DeVito.
I commend you on your effort as well. It was no small challenge running this task force. I think you did a great job.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you guys, working with you guys, I mean, you guys are I have to say, these maps were great. You advocated well, and I think this map X gives respect to the diversity of Fort Worth and to the growth in Fort Worth and all the communities. Mr. Williams always said, we want a map that's best for Fort Worth. Ms. Kennedy said it. Everyone here, I think, adheres to that same principle, and thank you so much. All right, now we have to appoint someone to.
Just real quick, the city staff and Fernando Costa, thank you very much. You guys were fantastic.
You guys all deserve. If any of you guys want to say anything, or gals, pardon my language, if any of you all, maybe I should just use the generic y'all. If any of y'all want to make any final comments, you certainly are welcome. Okay? All right. Anybody else want to say anything? All right. Let's authorize the committee to approve minutes of this meeting. How many people do we need for this, Ms. Guzman? How many people, Ms. Goodall, how many people do we need on this committee to approve the minutes?
So you could do one of two things. You could create a smaller group that would, I guess, consist of quorum from your body to approve the final minutes, since this is your last meeting. Or if you prefer not to have to get together again, you could make a motion to maybe have ACM Costa approve them with my attesting to the validity of the minutes.
Yeah, I like that approach. I like that approach. I think that the task force is weighed in. Yes. Ms. Kennedy.
I make a motion that we do what she just said.
All right. Second by Ms. Boyd, right? And Mr. Williams? Yeah. All in favor? Aye. All right. Man, you guys are quick. All right. With that, we are now adjourned because I've already done my closing remarks. So we stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
Okay.